Well, in this video, we start a new geographical location. We're going to start at the river and work our way west, at least south of Black River. We've already done north, and the point that we're going to start with is Vantage Point. Today it is one of the focal points of the city of Port Huron. And as we zoom in on these little white things near the river, we find out that they're actually tents for a farmer's market. And so we can just stroll along the riverfront and look at the vegetables and the flowers. Everything's for sale. And as we walk a little further down the path, we can look over the edge and watch these fishermen fishing. And then continue down a ways, look at the sculptures. Very unique sculptures, I might add. And on a warm day, you can get thirsty. But we have a fountain here not only for people, but for your pets. And when your dog finishes his water and looks in the bottom of the bowl, he'll see this. Have a doggone good day. What more could you ask for? Many times you find pictures on the internet, you just don't know who to give credit to. But many of these pictures that you've seen here so far have been supplied by Mary Truckin. She does a wonderful job of photographing scenes around Port Huron. And one of those scenes is the Great Lakes Maritime Center. You can go inside and learn about the freighters that you see from the windows inside and see some model ships. You can also get a snack, a good place to rest. And when you've rested up, you can walk over to this little pier here. And you can walk around and get a nice look at the river, do a little fishing maybe, and maybe wonder, why do they have these great big paperweights on each side? Some of you are thinking about now, well, I thought these videos were about history. What's this got to do with history? Well, so many of the folks that watch these videos are like me. They don't live in Port Huron anymore, and some of them hardly ever get a chance to see what's going on, and so I know they'll enjoy this part of it. But for those of you that are itching to get to the history, let's get to it. This is what the view looks like today, compliments of Google satellite. And you can see the Black River going into the St. Clair River. But in 1867, it looked like this. And you can also see the same thing, the rivers, the juncture of the rivers. But you can look at the tip there. As we zoom in here, we can see it a little better. That protrusion appears to be a man-made wharf. And as we go to the right here, we can see more dockage. Can't tell actually if that dockage is above the water or above land. But one thing we can tell is that this area was a shipping hub. You can see the various ships there docked at the wharf. And you can also see the railroad there. A railroad that would increase in size and complexity for over 100 years. It just got larger and larger. In this picture here, the railroad just dead ends. You don't see it going across the river. There's no bridge there yet. But you can see in this drawing here, by 1894, the railroad did go north across Black River, and you can see the swing bridge there that it went across. The building there on the left, you see, is the Port Huron and Northwestern Railway station. And that street that goes between that and the grain elevator is actually Court Street. Today, Court Street stops short of the river, but back then it went almost completely to the river because it went to the grain elevator, and that was on the river. The Port Huron Northwestern Railway line was founded in 1878 by several of Port Huron's prominent citizens, such as Daniel Harrington and James Beard, Henry Howard, Henry McMorrin, Silas Ballantyne, and a couple other fellows you wouldn't recognize. But say, for example, Charles Ward, who was a bank president. He bequeathed the entrance to the Pine Grove Park. If you look at the very top of it, you'll see his name up there. This railway was called a narrow gauge, as the line was called because its rails were 36 inches apart, as opposed to the standard 56.5 inches. This photograph you're looking at gives you a good idea of the difference between the two types of tracks and also the difference between the engines, because the larger tracks, of course, could hold larger engines and larger cars. And eventually they switched over to standard gauge, which means they had to add another rail since two different gauges would be running the tracks, and the tracks would look something like this here. And this is what it looked like as it went through Pine Grove. When they went over the Black River and north, they came through the Pine Grove Park, and you see these tracks here with the three rails. So both gauges could run over these tracks. The tracks reached Croswell in May of 1879, and Sand Beach, or Harbor Beach now, in September of 1880. A branch to East Saginaw via Zion and Fargo opened on February 21st, 1882. The branch included a bridge over the Black River near Norman Road that was the longest, 800 feet, and the highest, 70 feet over midstream, in the state at the time. The main depot was called Union Station, opened at the foot of Court Street in 1881. The tracks crossed the mouth of the Black River and passed through Pine Grove Park and the abandoned Fort Gratiot Military Reserve, property the railroad owner snapped up at an 1881 government auction. The tracks laid across the ruins of Thomas Edison's boyhood home, which had been destroyed in an 1870 fire. This had the effect of preserving Edison's basement for archaeologists. Here's a picture of the Union Station at the foot of Court Street, along with the narrow gauge engine and cars out front. I always thought the Grand Trunk Station, the tunnel station, was a wonderful station, but I sure would have liked to see this one for real. We have a great description of this building. Let me read some of it to you. The size of the building was 32 by 150 feet, with 2 stories high and a cupola on the top. A 14-foot platform ran all around its ground level, and a balcony 6.5 feet wide runs a full length on both sides at the second floor. The projection of the roof on each side is wide enough to shade the balcony, and is supported by strong brackets 66 in number. There are upward of 100 windows, including a bay window from the roof down on the riverside. Too bad we can't see that picture. There are 19 outside doors, 9 of them double doors. The sides of the building are tightly sheeted with lumber. Against this is felt, paper lining, and then the siding. Inside, the finish is of cherry and ash. On the lower floor are a ladies' waiting room, a gentleman's waiting room, and a dining room, each 22 by 31 feet in size. Also 11 other rooms of various sizes, including ticket office, baggage room, train dispatcher's room, and a kitchen. Above them are 16 rooms, besides halls, all for the uses of the officers of the railroad. In the north end, a brick vault extends from the ground to the roof. It is 8 by 16 feet in size and has 2 one-foot walls all around it, with an airspace between them, making it certainly fireproof. The structure is heated by steam and lighted by gas made in the building. The boiler room is brick, 16 by 24 feet in size, with a cement floor. The whole building rests firmly on spiles that were driven into the ground 10 feet. The cost reached $10,000. I've looked at this picture many times, but I've never noticed that there was writing on the end of the building. And you can read the top line fairly clearly. It says Port Huron and Northwestern Railway. I can't quite read out what's below it, but it appears to be the different stops on their routes, so that could be it. Or it could be something else entirely. The Flint and Pierre Marquette Railway bought the Fort Huron and Northwestern line in 1889. This was a larger railroad and had many more branches and stops than the Fort Huron Northwestern Railway did, as you can see on the schedule here. In this photograph here, you can see the north end of the station, the second floor of it anyway, in this part of the photo. But on to the left, you can see the McMorran elevator and mill. And it gives you an idea how close they were to each other. The station was on the south side of Court Street and the mill was on the north side of Court Street. And as we zoom out, you can see there's a lot of activity at the station during this photograph. You can see the carriages and all the people. So what was the big deal here? Why so many people? The reason? For our boys have returned from the Spanish-American War. Company F to be exact. September 4th, 1878. Most people don't know much about the Spanish-American War. After all, it was a war that only lasted about 3 months. But they do remember this. Remember the Maine. This was a ship that was supposedly sank by the Spanish in Cuba and Havana Harbor. Of course, it was proven later that the Spanish didn't sink it, but this is pretty much the phrase that people around the United States were saying, remember the Maine, and probably what brought us to war. And our boys in Port Huron and Company F were ready to go. Here's a couple photos of Company F, at least some of them. Just a little over 3,000 men died in this war, and almost all of them from disease. But the ones that made it home had a grand reception in Port Huron. They were met at the station, and they were paraded through towns. And we have a couple of pictures of that parade. This photograph was taken on Huron Avenue in the 200 block on the east side of the street. Quite a crowd. And this is the same block, only a little different angle and perspective. In this photograph, we have the officers riding horses out front, and as we look behind the parade there, you can see the J.B. Sperry Company, not in the location that we're used to seeing it, but this is the earliest picture that we have of Sperry's, and that was on the corner where Kresge's would eventually go. It wasn't unusual for our soldiers coming home from war to be paraded through town. Here we see the Red Arrow Division coming across the Military Street Bridge, and that was in 1919, returning from France in World War I. Alright, let's get back to Vantage Point, and this is what it looked like back then. Quite a bit different than today. You're looking at the McMorran elevator and mill. At one time there was 7 different elevators in Port Huron, but as time went on that figure dwindled down to 3. And the 3 main elevators here that we're going to be looking at now would be the Botsford elevator, which was just north of Pine Grove Park. And then the second one was the Grand Trunk elevator, which would have been south, on the south end of town. And then, of course, the McMorran elevator, which we've been looking at. Being as the elevator was such a high structure, it was easily visible in town. Even coming down the river, the ferries back and forth, they could identify it quite easily. And this picture here was taken off the ferry boat, and you can see the elevator there on the right. In this photograph here, we're looking south, and you can see the elevator is actually across the river. And today you would probably see the Basque Railroad Bridge in the upright position if you were looking this way. On the right there, that's the Messenger Hotel. This would be right, that would be on the corner of Grand River and Commercial Street. Of course, Commercial Street's no longer there. Closest street we have it to is Merchant that runs north and south, the closest one to the river, but it would be close to that location anyway. This mill and elevator that was located where Vantage Point is today was established in 1877 by E.B. Harrington and Henry McMorran, and was pretty well known as the McMorran elevator. And they carried it on for a number of years, and then in January of 1893 they leased the mill to George R. Davidson, and it was called Michigan Mills. And if you look at this drawing here, you can see the name Davison on it, George R. Davidson Mill, and then referring to Michigan Mill right below it. This mill burned down in what I believe would be 1900, although this picture states it's 1909. I have documentation that says it was 1900. In fact, all 3 mills, the Botsford, the Grand Trunk, and McMorran or Davison Mill, all burned within 1 year of each other. And the McMorran Mill shows up in the 1899 directory, but does not show up in the 1901, 1904 directory, and the same with the Botsford. And since they all burned down within a year of each other, I don't think the Grand Trunk burned down, but it did have a serious fire. At least according to this little news article here, it says that all three burned within a year of each other. In our next video, we'll look at a few more things that used to be in Vantage Point that you may not be aware of.